You've heard of 1 through 8th gear, but now get ready for 1.4, 2.7, and 3.8.
Wow, all of my favorite simulated gear ratios. And yeah, if you couldn't guess from that, obviously we're talking about the CVT today.
CVT, what does that mean?
That is a great question, but before we answer that burning question, as I'm sure everyone wants to know more about, welcome back to Trunk Talk. My name is Charlotte.
My name's Gabby.
And this is the show where we talk about all things automotive, and today we're getting a little bit technical, but we are still keeping it open for everyone. And what car are we filming in today?
Today we're filming in a 2024 Kia Sorento X Pro, and of course, if you guys didn't know, we are based in a Kia and Hyundai dealership, but we keep things pretty unbiased. We're just here to talk about cars and different things related to the car world.
Absolutely. So today we are talking about the CVT, or continuous variable transmission. Now, if you're hearing this and you're like, oh my goodness, I know absolutely nothing about cars, don't worry, we're still going to keep it pretty basic. That way anyone, whether you're a master mechanic, whether you are just like cars or are car shopping, that way you can follow along and you can understand. So what's our outline for the day?
All right, so this one's all about drama. So if you thought you were going to learn something today, you're all going to learn about the scandal. So first off, we're going to answer the question, what is a CVT or continuously variable transmission? We're also going to talk about the major issue with them, and it's the fact that I don't like them. So, no, but seriously, the CVT does have a bad rap, largely because when it became popular in the early 2000s, it wasn't really good at all, really. So that this system is still facing a lot of backlash, and we're going to talk about that for a little bit. We're also going to talk about different CVT systems and how they're different than, you know, the traditional CVT. Sorry, that got a little bit confusing, but I promise we'll simplify it towards the end of today's video. And then we're going to give our thoughts based off personal experience driving these vehicles, because of course Kia and Hyundai do have their version of this, and we've driven just about anything under the sun, from performance cars to jalopies. So let's get into it. Charlotte's going to lead the way with what is a CVT.
Yeah, so when you think of when you get into your vehicle, your regular automatic vehicle, obviously you're going to have your gear shift, drive, park, neutral, reverse, everything along those lines. Now a CVT, it is still an automatic transmission, but it's going to differ from what you think of your typical automatic transmission. So usually if you're thinking of that, even think of a bike if you're not too familiar with cars, you're going to have gears, and between those gears you're going to have different gear ratios. The lower gears are going to give you power for acceleration. Your higher gears, you know, keep you at that cruise, keep your RPMs low, give you that better fuel economy. Now scratch that when you were thinking of a CVT. And it's going to get technical, so obviously you already know I'm going to be talking with my hands, so if you're listening to this, maybe watch the video too.
Just so you can get the full, you know, the feel.
So what a CVT is instead of having all of those different gears, it's really comprised of two main pulleys, a driving pulley and a driven pulley, and between them there's going to be either a belt or a chain that's looping them, and depending on the diameter that the belt is creating and basically the ratio between them, it's going to keep it so that it's continuously changing gear, basically. Even though there isn't gears, it's continuously shifting per se, even though again it's not even really shifting.
So there's no like first, second, third, fourth
There's
gear.
no first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, all the way up. There's none of those set gears, but it can give you some preset gear ratios, as Gabby was talking about in the intro, depending on basically the implied shifting. But basically the purpose behind CVTs and the driving force behind them per se is they're designed to continuously be changing gears depending on what driver input is. But it's nothing that's going to be preset unless, you know, you decide to flip it into manual mode or using some paddle shifters. Then it's going to give you a little bit more of those preset shift patterns and make it feel like it's shifting even though it's really not shifting. It's really deceptive.
So in theory, it sounds great. It sounds like there's always a perfect gear for whatever kind of driving you're doing, right?
In theory, and that is exactly the theory behind it.
Yeah, that's why they do it.
You know, it's supposed to be, you know, something that is so light, it's fuel efficient, smooth shifting. But a lot of these pros can be some of the cons. So
that will gently segue us into my hot take on this. And I don't hate CVTs. Now I don't. But when they first came out, they were garbage. So when I think of CVTs...
Is that the technical term for it?
Yeah, actually,
yeah,
it is.
I thought so.
I am master mechanic. So when you think of CVTs, usually Nissan and CVT go hand in hand. Nissan, Mitsubishi, they all use the same CVT transmissions. They used Jatco, I believe.
Yeah.
Japanese automatic transmission company. So it was the same thing, which means if the Nissan one failed, the Mitsubishi one was failing too. They were the same garbage, essentially.
Notice how we didn't say succeed.
Yeah, we know how we didn't say succeed.
Notice how we only think about them failing.
Yeah, and I mean, the cars, they were efficient, yeah, but when you went to drive them, it felt like it was such a lackluster experience. And I wasn't driving one brand new at that time, but I did have some family members that did have some of the Nissan product, and they're like, this is horrible. And my aunt actually ended up getting a manual transmission Nissan just because she did not want to go with that CVT. It was just so bad. And I mean,
that's
you gotta do
so funny.
You gotta do what you gotta do. And that's just a sad reality. I don't think anyone was vouching for them at that time.
Now, if you think that we're just ragging on CVTs, we are. No, just kidding. But obviously, like that was
gets better.
That was some of the very early stuff, you know. The same thing as, you know, your phone or your car technology. It evolves over time. It's going to get better over time. This is, again, just the early stages, so don't worry.
And the early 2000s is not when they invented the CVT. The CVT's actually been around for a long time. And I'm pretty sure the first North American usage of a CVT was in a Subaru. It was one of their small, compact, almost SUV-like vehicles. I forget the name of it.
Something really random. Here's a little fun fact for you today. But Leonardo da Vinci, the painter/inventor, they found a rudimentary design or sketch of something akin to a CVT transmission.
Similar, yes. But Benz actually patented it.
Yes.
Later on, which they
come up so much.
Yeah, almost every single Trunk Talk episode, we're like, oh, Benz.
Yeah, we're talking about them.
Yeah. Well, anyway, this is the Benz Talk podcast. Yeah. All right, so I forget where I was even going, but essentially, these vehicles, why a lot of people had issues with them is, number one, they would fail, but also number two, that's never a good thing. And number two is, even when they weren't failing, just the driving experience was so lackluster.
Yeah.
So these transmissions would stick. You'd be driving at highway speeds, and some of my friends, they do not care how their car drives. They just need a car that starts and takes them to where they need to go. But if you are someone who really enjoys your drive or feels one with your vehicle, you may want to hear your vehicle's response. You may be wanting to feel an engaged driving experience, right? This vehicle was the equivalent to, I don't know, I want to say like an escalator at the mall. It was just
golf cart.
It was not it. So essentially, it was just kind of stick in its gear ratio. So whatever it decided the gear that needed to be in, it felt like you were just kind of static there. And then if you accelerated to go a little bit faster, maybe to pass somebody on the highway or to get to highway speeds, it kind of had a lag before the vehicle would actually speed up. And this isn't exactly something you want, especially in an emergency type situation where you need to go. And regardless, it might just feel like failure. You know what I mean? Someone who doesn't know much about cars or doesn't know how a CVT is supposed to operate might think, wow, my car is literally broken. It's not accelerating. And yeah, it's just not a great experience. Of course, this is definitely improved. This is the still early CVT transmissions that I'm talking about, but you can still get that experience in a lot of vehicles if you pay attention to it.
It's kind of like that rubber banding effect, if anyone's heard that term that's kind of been coined with CVTs, is it feels like there's so much build up, so much tension as you're pulling back like that rubber band, and then it snaps.
And for a lot of, so you'll see CVTs in a lot, it used to be just compact cars for the most part, but now you'll see CVTs in SUVs, which is crazy. Mid-sized cars, the Kia Soul is IVT, I should say, not a traditional CVT. Subaru has a bunch of CVTs, even their WRX, which is a performance sedan, or sporty sedan, I should say, has a CVT. And when I found that out, my jaw dropped. I was like, that CVT, no business being in that car. No business. But of course, there have been improvements to make them more catered towards that type of vehicle. So a performance vehicle that has a CVT is going to have those artificial shift points that make it feel more responsive and more like a traditional car. It's almost like an automatic would have been great there, just a regular automatic, but
sometimes we take things too far.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's it. That's all for today's episode. Just kidding. Next point.
I think the next point, it was, kind of the cons and the pitfalls of CVT. You covered a lot of them just with that, that buildup. And even though, again, that was in specific context of the early models, a lot of those things are still things that we see today, like a little bit of that sticking. Now, it has gotten better. I will say they do give a pretty decent fuel economy.
Oh, very much so, yeah.
Yeah, because you drive one and you have a bigger.
I drive an IVT, Charlotte. Okay, it's completely different.
Oh, I wonder what the difference is.
Stay tuned.
But where you can kind of get into some problems too with your CVT and, you know, with transmissions in general is the biggest pitfall can be overheating and then ultimately having that lead to failure. So that can be one of the biggest cons too of a CVT is you do want to make sure that when you have transmission fluid, you are replacing it, you are replacing the filter on a not a frequent basis, but within your service intervals. CVTs are also more expensive to repair.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can be a little bit of a big ticket. A lot of mechanics who I've spoken to have said that they're a moneymaker in the shop. You see a CVT roll in and you're like, oh yeah, like I know I'm gonna make some hours on that.
I heard there's not a lot of like remanufactured options for them as well too. You have to get a new one for the most part. And of course that's gonna vary vehicle to vehicle, maker to maker, but yeah.
Also just, you know, the lack of kind of feeling like driver response is usually you want a little bit of interaction with your vehicle, but really you're not getting that. And then also that same stickiness that you can be feeling. Sometimes noise too, obviously back in the day they were a lot louder than they are now, but sometimes you can still kind of get that loud, clunky whining almost.
Yeah. Oh, that was a big one too.
The sound of them actually, so.
They almost have like a droning sound where the car, you know, with the gas, or I don't want to say gas car, with a regular automatic, your RPMs go up as you're accelerating and they'll drop down once you find that shift point, right? So once you move up a gear, you're back down until you speed up again. And it's nice because you hear your engine roar, you hear your vehicle work through its natural cycles of life, or cycles of transmission, I should say. And it's fine. You're up to highway speeds, the car is sitting happily, it's in its gear, it's fine until you decide you want to make another drastic change, slow down, speed up. CVT kind of always has that droning sound, and I'm so sorry if you guys are listening to this loudly in your stereo or with headphones, but
thank you for the demo, but also for the warning.
Of course. That wasn't a really good demo noise. It's more like a
yeah, and then you like lose power.
Yeah, and then you lose power, and it's just, or you step on it because you need to pass someone, and it's the same. Yeah, it's not increased. Very official stuff here, guys.
Yeah.
Next thing I want to talk about is what's an IVT, because I've had so much to say about CVTs and why I don't like them, but I'm a little bit of a hypocrite.
I was going to say, what car do you drive?
I can't tell you that. Just kidding. I drive a Kia Forte that has an IVT. So the current model year Kia Forte, you get it with an IVT transmission or a dual clutch. Dual clutch is for the turbocharged model. It's a little bit more sporty, a little bit more fun, a bit more responsive. It's great. I didn't buy that one because I prioritize fuel efficiency and my insurance was way too expensive thanks to my driving history. So we got the IVT. And the reason why I don't hate it is because what Kia and Hyundai did with their IVT system and why it's not called a CVT is because it's intelligent. It's an intelligent variable transmission. So this vehicle also, essentially,
back on track,
has these artificial gear shifts. So like Charlotte mentioned, regular CVTs, they make their own gears.
Yeah.
It's based off whatever the driver's asking, and that's why it can kind of be a little bit delayed, right? It's got to find that perfect gear. Now, with a IVT, these vehicles already have their built-in artificial gear ratios. So when I go to speed my car up, it kind of finds a gear much quicker, so it's much more responsive, and I really do like that. And again, that changes based off what drive mode my vehicle's in, so my car does have the option of a normal mode, a sport mode, and a smart mode. Sport mode is definitely going to have a little bit more increased response, which I do love. I only ever drive my car in sport mode. I don't even care if it consumes a little bit more fuel because I prioritize that communication, you know what I mean? I like to feel like my vehicle is listening to what I need to do, especially considering I drive a very busy highway every single day. I don't want to feel like I'm not in control of my car, if that makes sense. I mean, it's a couple thousand pounds, and you know, you don't want to...
You want to have something that is more in control.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, mechanically, what makes it different, I just have some points here. So it was built off of the CVT. So it's designed to improve on the downfalls of a CVT. It features an adaptive shift style. So just like what I said, it has those artificial shift points, which kind of gives it more of a regular automatic feel, which I really do like, and a lot of people are familiar with. You're also going to get more linear acceleration, so everything just feels more normal, I should say. And Kia's system also utilizes a chain belt. There we go.
I was going to say,
instead of a traditional push belt. So it actually does have some different mechanisms in it to make it perform different. A lot of people are like, oh, it's just a gimmick. It's just a CVT. No, it's actually
it is different. Now, there are some CVTs that are, of course, built with a chain instead of having that regular belt, but that's also, having the chain is really going to help with decreasing the amount of slippage, or if you watch our YouTube channel, slippage, which is also going to help with the general performance of those vehicles and give it more of a seamless performance, seamless shift with air quotations around it.
Yeah.
So.
And like I mentioned earlier, the Subaru WRX, it's a fun performance, rally-inspired compact sedan. I loved the Subaru for the longest time. And the CVT news broke my heart. Not like I even had one, but anyway, I was like, wow, I'm definitely not going to buy one now. But I was reading more and more about it, and they've built that CVT based off what the Subaru was. You know what I mean? It's not as boring as a CVT in a car like that sounds. So it still has those artificial shift points. It's supposed to be responsive. It's not like the same CVT you'll get in a Versa Note. You know what I mean? So each car is built to be in its own car. I'm sorry that Nissan ruined it in the early 2000s, but we're improving.
They've improved.
Yes.
Don't worry.
Certainly.
We don't. No hate, no shade, no tea. Little tea.
All right.
But one question I do want to ask, and I want you guys to consider this too, especially if you're watching this because you are shopping for a new car, is do you think a CVT is worth it? Yeah. CVT, IVT is worth it.
Do you?
So I have driven vehicles that have CVT, IVT, or it was an IVT because it was a Kia product, and I drove it pretty consistently. I probably had it for like a year and a half because I drive demo vehicles. I mean, as far as performance, I didn't have any problems. I didn't notice any, any slippage or anything along those lines, loss of power. But I am someone who does like driver or vehicle input for my driving habits, and that's just because I like to drive fun. I like cars. I enjoy, again, feeling it. I enjoy the emotional connection behind driving a car and how it feels. But if you're the everyday consumer, I wouldn't let this scare you off of being like, oh my goodness, I want to get a Kia Seltos, but I'm scared because it's got an IVT, or I want to dip into the Nissan product, but they use CVT. Yeah. Don't let this scare you away from that, because it still is going to perform well. And
my last note is I've been selling cars for a while, and a lot of the Kia and Hyundai vehicles do come equipped with an IVT. So think Kia Forte, Kia Seltos, Kia Soul, Hyundai Kona. You're going to get that IVT transmission. And if you're someone who's looking for a vehicle and you see IVT or CVT somewhere in the vehicle's description, do not be scared. I definitely recommend driving it though, just to make sure it's something you can live with, because some people may not. And
some people, you may not even actually notice the difference.
Exactly. So a lot of my customers, it performs like a regular automatic. You drop it into drive, flip it into reverse, put it in neutral. There's no shifting. Of course, it's not a manual, right? So it's nothing that takes a new learning curve, but the response is a little bit different. The reason why I had so much to say about CVTs is because I'm a freak, and I've driven some really bad ones, but I've also driven some of our current models, and it's fine. You flip it into sport mode. If you're just someone who does their daily driving, highway, city, whatever, I will say the IVT is fairly responsive, and new CVTs are too. It really depends on what you're looking for in a car, but I think CVT is not that bad.
Yeah, the tech has come a long way from where it started off, and a lot of manufacturers have taken that simple design, they've expanded upon it, they've made it something a little bit better for their consumers too, and even if they haven't added anything to it to change it up, there's always been improvements in tech. And that's the thing about the auto industry. Things are always changing, things are always evolving, and there's always something new.
Yes.
So with that being said, thank you guys so much for tuning in to today's podcast episode. If you want to see more of Gabby and myself, you can find us on YouTube at the Kia Hyundai channel. You will never believe what we film there.
It's all about CVTs.
You can also find us on Instagram. My handle is shars.cars.khc.
And mine is Gabby's, Gabis.
Gabis.
_ garage, GARAGE.
Thank you. So if you're listening to this, please rate this podcast 5 stars. It means a lot to us. If you're watching on YouTube, feel free to leave a like, leave a comment down below, or subscribe, and we will see you on the gram too.
Be sure to tell us what you like or dislike about CVTs, if you've ever had any, and if you'd consider buying one. Thanks for watching, you guys.
Bye.
Bye.